GPT. Um, Thanks, you guys. Well, I put together a few slides about content strategies, kind of especially focused on companies that are earlier stage, that are younger, because content can be really hard. It feels daunting, feels like everybody else is doing it. Like, they have a team of like 400 writers and designers, and you're like one person trying to compete. And even though that isn't really true, it feels that way. And so I thought I'd share a few things about content strategy that have helped me and helped companies that we work with. So let me share my screen real quick. Let's see if I hit presenter mode. Is that working for everybody? Good?
Yeah.
Okay. So thanks to Darla on the SVS team for giving me the idea to do a David and Goliath, but I thought that would turn out pretty good. For those of you who don't know me, I've been blessed to meet several of you already, but for those who don't know me, I'll drop my LinkedIn in the chat before we're done. But my name's Chad Jardine. I'm the founder and CEO of a fractional CMO firm called CMO Zen. My career I've spent mostly doing marketing for technology companies. I have done a little bit of retail, a little bit of real estate, and then I also teach. I teach a course in venture capital at the U, where I was fortunate enough to meet Taylor and Spencer, and I did a round of marketing courses for UVU as well. CMO Zen, what CMO Zen is an outsourced CMO firm that really focuses on companies who are between $1 million and $50 million in their revenue story. A quick plug too. So next week, if you're local to Utah, if you're not local, send me a note. We'll stream this out. But if you're local to Utah, I'll be doing a presentation with two other people who are actually way better than me at content. Jacob Andres presented here. I don't know if he's here today, but he's presented to this group before. He's an expert at content first SEO. Great to hear from him. And then Krista Lee Beck, if you know her, she's the founder and CEO of Comma Copywriters, which is an outsourced copywriting firm. And so the three of us will take an hour on the 19th at the Kiln. Wes, thanks for the plug. At the Kiln to talk about content. So if you're interested, you can go to that link at the bottom, cmozen.com/lunch, and love to see you in person. Okay, so I'm going to start with a quick conversation around why you should do content. Why does it matter, and why is it important? And to start with, like, marketing is really not complex. The way we go about doing marketing can be very complex, but the essence of marketing is not very complex. It starts with a person. That person has a need or a want, and somewhere in the universe there's a product that meets that need, alleviates that pain, or satisfies that want. And so the tricky thing is that these two are a perfect match for each other, but they have not yet found each other. They are unaware that each other exists. So the very first job that marketing always has to do is taking that person and moving them from naive to aware about the product. And as you get further along, marketing becomes a bunch of other things. But in the early days, marketing is basically just awareness. How do we make the right people aware of us? Because when you just created your new product, you have your new thing, and nobody knows about you. And so marketing's job is to help these two meet and fall in love. The tricky thing about that is the unaware buyer, they might want, value, and be very willing to pay for your product. The problem is that they can't until they know about it. And so that's the job that we're trying to solve. And sometimes when we're thinking about content creation, I'll share the slides with you, and these ones that are linked will be linked to free resources that you can download and use. But this map is helpful. So this is called the 5 stages of awareness. It's rooted in an older sort of academic thing from the 60s called the Lavage-Steiner hierarchy. But essentially, unaware means total naivety, no idea that the product exists. Problem aware is, oh, I know that I have this problem. Sometimes people don't even realize that they're experiencing a problem that somebody is solving. So problem aware is like, hey, now I know I have this problem. Solution aware is, oh, now I know people are out there trying to solve this problem in a certain way. Maybe software solves my problem, maybe a hard good solves my problem, but now I'm becoming more aware that I would be benefited by plugging in this solution. And then product aware is the exact type of product that solves the problem. And most aware is the idea that your product is the best solution of the products that are available to solve that. So if you think about the job that you want content to do, it can be really helpful to have this framework. It's like, are we just introducing people to the problem? Like maybe educating around the problem is the strongest thing we can do. One of the things, people don't move through these stages like at an even pace. Oftentimes they'll drop through many stages really quickly. And so if we educate them about the problem, then they're like, oh yeah, and who told me about this? Oh, I see that this company published this content, and they rocket right to the bottom. Well, that's the one I want to buy from. So we're thinking about this relationship between making the customer aware of us and aware of our product, but don't we kind of need to know them too? Also, I'm going to try to use mostly like 80s movies, so we'll see how that works. If maybe I might have gone too old, but anyway, the idea is we actually need to know the prospect also in order for the relationship to work. So we're kind of like, the customer's kind of like behind the glass, and we're like the usual suspects up here. They can see us, we can't see them. And so they're learning about it, and ultimately we'll both know each other, but that doesn't happen at the same time. And so in modern marketing is the idea that people are learning about us long before we know about them. And so what that does is, I like this example, right? If you're thinking about, this is not an 80s movie, by the way, I went even older, but if you think about people used to window shop, right? You'd go walk through the city, and that people put their displays because it didn't require any relationship. It didn't require any commitment yet. I want to make sure that I want this thing before I go and engage with a salesperson or do more. And that's even more today. So if you think about, the internet is basically an empty shop. People can go in there and they can go through your store, and they don't need help, or they don't want it. They're just getting information, looking at things before they make the decision to engage. And so the customer knows us long before we know them. That puts the customer in the driver's seat about when they decide to swipe right. They get to pick when the relationship starts, or even if it starts. So when I was a younger marketer, we called this the pre-funnel. This is the area where we're still naive to the customer, but the customer is becoming aware of us. Now we have a much cooler name for this. This is called the dark funnel, or dark marketing, because we can't see them. And I think that's appropriate, right? Since marketing is the dark arts. And what we're going to talk about is content as a way to penetrate into that zone of dark marketing. Quick comment that the dark arts does not mean that we trick, hoodwink, weasel, swindle, hornswoggle, bamboozle, or otherwise do anything shifty with the customer. We want to be authentic and real, and all of these things get in the way of that relationship being authentic. But it does mean that we are blind. We don't know the customer, what they're doing. We don't know how interested they are. We know very little about them in the early days. But that doesn't mean that we are helpless. And part of the tools that we have to reach out to them is our content. So is what the customer learning about us while they're in the dark part of the funnel, is it accurate? Is it compelling? Is it motivating for them? These things are mostly in our control. Now, people could write about us, reviews could be done independently of us, but most of what people are going to learn from us is going to be on our website. It's going to be in content that we publish in other places, maybe LinkedIn or YouTube or wherever. And we put that material out. And so that's our lever to influence what's happening in the dark funnel. Okay. So it talks about kind of why we should do content, because content is our best tool for talking to people in one way, where we don't know who they are. How do we do it? How do we execute on the content? So here's a few things. So first off, I don't know if Catherine Bennett is on this call, but I loved this. She posted this last week. You got to have a plan. We need to be intentional about how we're doing this. So I like to think about it this way, as content strategy is two parts. There's a strategy around creating content, like what do we create, how to write it, what to write, and who we're writing to, and then a structural component. How do the pieces of content that we create relate to each other, and what's the job to be done for each one? So I'll start with talking about creating the right content. So what about Bob fans out there? Right? I need. We got to create demand from the prospect, and this is pretty tricky. I love this graph. I use this all the time. It's like if we think about our sales volume or our lead volume, the volume of people that are responding to us is an equation, and it equals the sum of their level of motivation less the combination of friction and concerns. So if we think about that, like maybe they have a technical concern, maybe their hot product is hard to use or whatever else. But at this stage, right, with content, what we need is the concern, maybe the relationship. What cost is I'm going to give up my time? Somebody's going to try to hard sell me. That could be the friction and concern that they're facing. So with our content, we need to generate enough motivation for them to go beyond that friction and those concerns. So I like to think about it like this. That motivation, right, a key thing is demand, and the motivation lives inside of our messaging, and our messaging is delivered. It lives inside of our content. And so as you think about what that means, one of the things that I like to do is in early customer interviews, listen for how the customer talks about your product, talks about your service, talks about how it solves their problem, and then turn their own language back around. So that you're talking to them in language that is familiar to them, that feels native to them. Number two is clarity and intent. So I like using the Lord of the Rings example here because you have this big story, lots and lots of events, very tightly focused, right? The beginning of the story is like, okay, what is it? Is this actually the One Ring? It's like, yes, it's the One Ring. We have clarity. For the rest of the series, there is no question about what that is. It's perfectly clear that is the One Ring. And everybody, all the characters are oriented around it. They're intent about what's happening with that ring. Get the ring to Mordor or steal the ring from, Frodo and keep it for Sauron. There's clear intent from everybody because it's all focused on that one clear objective. So a CEO I used to work for, Ken Myers, he taught me about this, and it's the metaphor of horse for sale. So the thing that's great about this is here's three words, and you know what the premise is of this. If this was an advertisement, I was selling a horse. Horse for sale tells you, I'm not giving pony rides. I'm not, it's not running a petting zoo, right? I have a horse and I want to sell it. Are you interested in buying it? It's very clear, and I think that I think that's a good example, right? We should aim for that level of clarity. Here's another ad example. For sale, baby shoes, never worn. This is also clear, but the level of emotional impact that it carries, the artistry that is in here is way beyond horse for sale. Especially like I'm sure that there are people on the call who can relate to this. My wife and I, we had a miscarriage in our married life, and this plucks at my heartstrings because of that. And even if you haven't had that experience, you can feel it. That emotional content is the next level up in terms of your content. So most people don't even get to horse for sale. So if you think about this, clarity first, cleverness, personality, and artistry second. Because if you miss on clarity, nobody cares about the rest of it. Here's another way of describing that. So clarity and intent is this point. Clarity equals I understand what this is. This is the, oh, I get it. Intent is the emotional punch that it has. It's like the promised land when we solve that problem is going to be, amazing. You're going to have an emotional connection to that, or that problem that you solve, or the connection that you have with the people. That emotional content, that's where we go from, oh, I understand, I get it, to, oh, and I want it. So this combination of awareness and desire is demand. That's the motivation that we're talking about. That's what drives the volume of people to come through. And all of this you can wrap inside your content. Okay, thinking about creating for others instead of ourselves. Best I could do here was the theme song. So it's not so much the story of this movie, but the person that you're writing for or filming for, like, they're looking for things. This is also at the heart of good SEO, right? That we're going to answer their questions, answer their search intent, but take the time to translate what it is that you're making or selling or the message that you want to convey, and translate into what does somebody want to hear. Put yourself in the shoes. This is really just about empathy. Put yourself in the shoes of the reader. And are you answering a question for them? Will this be interesting to them because of their perspective, not because you're pushing your perspective out onto them? The other one, this is significant. We could spend many days talking just about this, but this is a big way that as a small content producer, you can look like a big one, and that is to find and leverage templates. Find ways to be rinsing and repeating, right? To be waxing on, waxing off. Doing the same thing over and over again and getting your content production into a rhythm. And this may be as simple as, okay, I build a template, and also now I'm going to hire somebody to write for me or to create videos for me. Here's a couple of resources that I'll share. So I'll share, this is just like a sample of a blog post template that I have used. There's nothing magical about it. It's not the only way to do it, but having a template makes you faster. As you do it over and over again, your muscle memory kicks in and you'll get faster, and what you create will increase in quality as you increase your quantity. This is another piece that, and there's a link here. So when I share the slides with you, you can grab this and copy it and adapt it to your needs. But what I kicked this off earlier this year. I did a presentation for Utah Tech Week around pricing. And I had written an ebook and a bunch of resources around pricing that I've launched at this event. And all those things are available to you. If there aren't links here, shoot me a message, reach out to me on LinkedIn, and I'll send you any of those. But there's a lot of material there. And now I'm just carving off a little piece of that, a chapter here, a chapter there. And I publish that through my content calendar. So I'm trying to be regular about how I publish. And this tool helps me. So I started by, in fact, if you look at the Midday Connect archives, you'll see, I think it's Catherine Ross did a LinkedIn session. And I took a bunch of tips from her session and said, okay, for LinkedIn, I want to publish this many times a day, and I want to publish these different types of content, right? Some of it will be personal stories, some of it will be educational content, like the pricing material that I created, and I want to have that balance, and I want to publish on a certain schedule. And then I adapted the calendar to match what my strategy was. So now I can go in, I just check into the calendar every day, I go through and knock out the to-dos for the day, and my content's done. Okay, the last item is structure. So in this case, I think the key principle behind structure is to meet the prospect where they are. So as opposed to, and you think about, well, instant content kind of an inbound strategy. It's like, well, it is. What we're doing is, instead of sending salespeople out or SDRs to do outbound calling, we're sending our content out to attract the customer and bring it out. So the content has to still reach them where they are. And what we want to do is meet them and then lead them gently back to us with breadcrumbs of value. Or do a little Hansel Gretel. Yeah. This is a really well-known structural image from HubSpot. But the principle here is really great. So it's the idea that you have a hub and spoke methodology. So there's the hub, or a pillar piece of content, is deep. This is like your ultimate guide, your like my pricing ebook that I wrote. It is more extensive. And then with each thing that leads to that, each spoke, right, each little piece of cluster content, those pieces can be really narrow. And so maybe I want to talk about very specifically pricing strategies for SaaS companies. And I'm going to talk about, I'm going to go even deeper than I'm going to talk about certain types of tariff structures. So I have a usage-based pricing that encourages more people to use. and I'm going to write deep about that. That's going to be a spoke. That's going to be a cluster piece. And then at the end of that, the call to action is going to be, hey, and if you want to read more about this, go back to the pillar piece. And so the spokes become this wide funnel, and the pillar is a narrower part of the funnel. So it kind of works like this in practice. Lots of clusters, they don't have to be very long, and they're very narrowly focused, and they lead into the pillar. The pillar is more about establishing authority, and hey, look, you can get a extensive knowledge about this area of expertise here. And then somewhere along there, you're going to ask them to do something. It might be to subscribe to a newsletter. It might be to download a lead magnet. It might be to take some kind of subscribe to a webinar, something like that. But that way, you've got this wide funnel at the top where all I have to be interested in is that very narrow focus leads me back into a place where I'm going to capture their information. And from there, by the time somebody gives us their email or signs up for a webinar, now our relationship has started. They've gone from dark to I'm here and you should know me. So looking back at the funnel, content kind of matches that, right? So what we're sending out into the pre-funnel and even to the top of the funnel, those early stages, is oftentimes very much about education. Could be problem education. It could be education about our solution or our company, but it's more about, this should be independent value, whether you buy from me or not. This is value that we're creating. And then as you get to the middle of the funnel, it's like softer calls to action. So I want a relationship, but I'm not necessarily ready to buy. I might sign up for your webinar and I'm going to get more education, or I'm going to sign up for your newsletter and I'm going to get more education. And then at the bottom of the funnel is when somebody is ready to make a purchase. They're like, okay, I've seen you, we've developed this relationship, I know, like, and trust you, and now I'm ready. So I can, if you hit me with a message that is, hey, would you like to buy? And I would like to, I'm gonna convert. With some of these anytime I'm talking about writing, you could just insert, right? This could be blogging, creating videos, whatever, churning out memes, whatever it is, whatever content that you're putting out. A lot of times we just start writing. We just start creating stuff, and we post it, and we don't have this idea about the hub and spoke structure. We don't have this clarity around the job to be done for each piece. And so as a result, then we sit back and wonder, well, why didn't that work? Like why wasn't, if I build it, they will come, right? But that's not really how it works. Where we got to make sure that what we're writing meets them where they are first, and then lead them back. Another pitfall is maybe we take the content creation job and we give it to somebody on our team who's already got a full plate. And then we're in the same boat. Hey, why didn't that work? And even though all these tools make content creation simpler and easier, right? Like using templates, right? You'll be faster, but you still have to do it. And so this is kind of the last thought that I would say is, as you decide how much you want to bite off with your content, and this could be whether you're starting from scratch or whether you have a content program that has stalled and you want to breathe new life into it, pick a cadence for which you can be consistent. And then once you're consistent on that cadence, then you can be more. Then you can increase the volume, increase the frequency, and do more of that. Okay, I have a quick comment about AI. So there's a lot of discussion about content generated by AI right now. And so this is an example I just wanted to share you about how AI is both smart and dumb. So in this case, I'll give you the background. I asked GPT-4, right? So it's the latest version. I'm saying, hey, I want to learn about another AI. Teach me about Midjourney, who does images. Teach me about Midjourney. It gives me this list of everything I need to do to log into Midjourney and get started. The only problem is I look at the list and I was like, well, I know that Midjourney is actually administered through Discord, and you didn't say anything about that. So I was like, basically, ChatGPT told me generic instructions about how to log into anything. And so I was like, hey, do you know that Midjourney is done by Discord? And it comes back, oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, you need to create it on Discord and then go do this. And I was like, okay. And then can you tell me the difference between the original version of Midjourney and Midjourney 5? Because I know that ChatGPT is like basically handicapped beyond 2021, and Midjourney 5 just came out last month. And it tells me, it's like, oh yes, Midjourney 5, I'm sorry, Midjourney 5 has these features that are different than the old version of Midjourney. And I look at that and I was like, this could be any new product. It's like, we moved to the cloud, we have faster, better UI, we've, faster response times. I was like, you don't know what the heck you're talking about, ChatGPT. So I typed it back and I said, you don't really know what's different about Midjourney 5, do you? And ChatGPT that rolls over, right? And like admits to me that's been BSing me this whole time and telling me like, oh, I'm really sorry for those previous inaccurate responses. I try to be accurate, but I admit I don't really know. I don't really know anything about Midjourney 5. So as you think about content, I think one of the, like, I love using the ChatGPT. I'll use it to brainstorm headlines. I'll use it to hey, I've got a paragraph here and I'm struggling to make it shorter or something like this. But you don't want to use it on its own. Being too lazy about using AI is, your stuff will just be it'll just be easy to pick out and not look good. So, okay. If you need this link again, there's that. And like I said, I'll share these slides with you. Any questions? Let me check. I'll check the chat. There's probably a bunch.
I think there will be. Yeah. Because I told a bunch of people that what you're talking about applies to their work and they should be asking you questions while we have you on.
Well, I'm going to drop in, this is the link to this presentation and also a link to my LinkedIn. And then if there are questions, if you want to ask questions, just unmute yourself or I'd be happy to, or post them in the chat. Either way is good.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Robin, and then we'll hit Parker's question in the chat.
So the thing that I struggle with probably the most, like I would say number one is social media right now is just a big struggle. Number two is probably my newsletter, but because of the cadence of it, it's not so frustrating. So from like a social media standpoint, right now, the two platforms that I focus on are LinkedIn and Instagram. So I have two questions, if I may.
Yeah.
One is, what in your mind would be 1 to 2 of the better software to use in terms of, structuring and, getting like all of your content out ready to go so that you can just kind of like post it out there, knowing that I only use LinkedIn and Instagram. 2 would be, and maybe, you have like a general idea of my brand, but, what is the argument to, let's say, add more, right? So to add Facebook and Twitter back in, because I've been like rummaging that around my brain of whether or not to do that. So I would love your thoughts on that.
Okay, your first question was software and things to help on keeping a regular publishing cadence, like for LinkedIn and Instagram. And I don't have like a list of favorites here, but I can tell you a couple of things that I've been doing. With LinkedIn, some LinkedIn content is easy to generate and some is hard. So I try to pace myself about the content that is hard. And I use, like, there's a tool out there called Taplio, and they're a paid tool, but they have a free like carousel generator for Twitter, and I think they pull in Twitter and Reddit. So if you go to taplio.com, taplio.com/carousel, I think it is. Then because carousels, and I do original carousels, and I'll pull in Twitter carousels, and some of the best performing content that I posted on LinkedIn are these carousels. So that makes it really easy. If on Twitter, like if you see something, the other thing that I try to do is when I get on these channels, I try to go directly to the search. Like if I'm doing something on Twitter, I don't want to get lost, losing half my day looking at Twitter. So, but if I go directly to the search, then it's like, okay, like I'll search for a topic that I think is interesting to, like most of my clients are founders. They're people who are in that early stage. So that's who my audience is. I want to talk to them. And so I'll look for things that, like I'll also use a tool called SparkToro. On SparkToro, you can look at your audience and then look at topics or people they follow. and try to zero in. It's kind of like a co-pilot for a watering hole exercise. And so I find what they're interested in. So I went to SparkToro and said, oh, it looks like content marketing and digital marketing are hot topics for founders. So then I would go to Twitter and I'd look for content marketing and look for threads, because threads then I can turn into carousels using Taplio. So anyway, that's just one tool, and there's lots of ways to do that. And asking around, like, hey, you see something cool on LinkedIn, and try to follow up with the person. Hey, I thought you had this really cool content. How did you do that? And then also, because I worked on a big piece of content, like my pricing ebook, then I can peel off a chunk of that, and that makes it easy to, and I do most of it. Like, I schedule my LinkedIn about a week in advance. So I'll go and I just use the LinkedIn scheduling feature. I know I've used, I was trying the HubSpot feature, because HubSpot does LinkedIn and Twitter, but HubSpot's LinkedIn posting doesn't do carousels, because carousels you have to publish with the document feature. And so if I can, I'll combine them, but I found it better to just use my calendar. I'll go in the calendar and I'm like, okay, I'll tee up the week's LinkedIn posts. I don't post on the weekend generally, and I'll tee them up so that then I'm at least hitting a cadence of once a day. Let's see, Robin, your other question had to do with when should you look at other channels?
Yeah, like like personally, I don't spend a lot of time on Facebook and Twitter. I spend most of my time on LinkedIn and Instagram. And like from an audience perspective, I think that it encapsulates a pretty good broad section of my audience. But from a marketing standpoint, right? Like just pure marketing standpoint, what are your thoughts on, what platforms should you ultimately consider for like the best marketing strategy?
So I'll tell you I have a little bit of a contrarian view about this, because you can build a company and your marketing plan doesn't need to include social media at all if you want. And I think the reason I think that's useful to know is it lets you step back. It's like, oh, okay, why should I do anything? Why should I do any, maybe I should do direct mail, or maybe I should just go to events and talk to people in person. And so then as you step down, it's like, okay, which of the available channels that I have should I be using? The first thing I would be looking at is research. Is my audience there? Are there people talking about my topics there? Thanks, Alan. Is your tribe there? That's the main. And then if they are, that's kind of about your level of commitment, because any of us could spend our entire lives just posting and scrolling forever. And so I think it's more useful like that, back to that, be consistent and then be more. This is also hard to do. I don't mean to hold myself up as a great example of this, but I think it's the right principle, which is pick a cadence that you can maintain and then increase it as it makes sense, or shift as it makes sense to spend time on other channels. Thanks. Okay.
Thank you.
And also, I think your content's awesome, Robin. I like it a lot.
Thanks.
Oh, okay. I'm looking at, there was a comment about paid versus organic. So I think that the first thing I would say is that where people are in the funnel is a big reason for why I would pick one over the other. Like if I was going to do AdWords, I think AdWords, this is generic advice too. So every individual case may be different, but in general, AdWords is good for tipping people over the edge if they're already close to the bottom of the funnel. They already know about you. If I'm using AdWords to educate people at the top of the funnel, that is like a quick way to spend a ton of money and not like, because you have to move them so far. So unless you can hit them there and they drop through the entire funnel really fast, then I think what you want to do is be able to triangulate around people who are close to tipping. And I think that's your best bang for your buck with AdWords. Heather could probably talk more about that because she spends more time focused on that side of things. But paid social is a little higher in the funnel, and organic social I think is basically non-existent anywhere except for probably LinkedIn and TikTok. I don't know, Heather, do you have any comments about it? You want to add to anything I had to say there?
No, I think what you said is great. From an organic perspective, like paid organic is an oxymoron. So I would say I wouldn't touch it with a 10-foot pole. But yeah, I thought what you said was great.
Cool. Okay, a couple of other questions. Also, I know we're kind of hitting the wall on time. Taylor, maybe if people want to stay on, I'm happy to answer questions.
We'll go two more minutes to 11:50, and then we'll be done. Thanks, Chad.
Okay, thanks, Spencer. Let's see, Casey, cadence of the funnel. Is this something you work on as a daily progression, or is available all the time? So I think it starts with measuring, right? So you want to measure and see where in the funnel people are moving. If you hit people high in the funnel, they get educated about sound helm, right? And they drop to the bottom fast, then it doesn't matter. Like the sales cycle is so quick that you don't need to spend a lot of time agonizing over each of the steps they take in the middle. If they're not, though, then you want to look for bottlenecks. That ideally the funnel is useful for that, I think. Identifying and attacking bottlenecks. Oh, hey, people are getting to the middle, but they're never getting to the bottom of the funnel. Then I can try to spend more of my time moving people from my webinar to actually being willing to buy, or understanding the audience. Maybe I'm bringing in an audience who's just love what I'm putting out there, but they're not my customer. So they want to be educated, they like consuming my content, but they're not my customer. Then I can change that.
So I guess a little more on my question is this something you kind of try to publish a funnel per week? Like on Monday, I'm creating the top of the funnel, or do you work on like a campaign of like top of funnel campaign that goes on until you start to get customers into the next one and then kind of work that way? Like I was wondering how fast that goes.
So my approach to that is pretty bespoke. It's kind of customized to what the individual situation is. Here's an example. Maybe I have something like a webinar or an event that is a point in time. In that case, maybe I want to do a lot of building towards the event. I'm going to do a bunch of activity and everything's driving toward that event. And then at the event is where I'm going to try to harvest the relationships that I've been building. If it's just, hey, I'm day in, day out, I'm going to do the same activities. Then what I'm going to do is say, okay, what do I physically have the capacity to do? And that's going to dictate my cadence. And then I'm going to look and say, okay, I only have this much time. Maybe it's 1 day a week, whatever that might be, something that feels very doable. I'm going to take that amount of time and I'm going to say, okay, where now can I be most effective? Is it doing this, one type of content or another, leveraging one channel or another? Am I better focusing on, I usually recommend that you focus on 1 or 2 channels at a time until you get something that's really working. And this is both for content and just marketing generally. Get a couple of channels that are working to where it feels like, okay, this is predictable. I understand how this is working. And then run small experiments in others to find other, kind of veins of gold to mine.
Okay, appreciate that.
Just deeper dive, organic being non-existent. That's a good question, Sarah. So organic is like, okay, I'm going to post something about myself or my company, like on Facebook. Facebook is not showing that to anybody. And so, they're looking, what they're doing is they're benefiting people who are paying them for their ads. And so really those channels and used to be like, right in the early days of Facebook, you could post stuff and people would find it and they would take action. They could get familiar with your company. And those days are pretty much in the past. So the content that you don't pay anything for, like I don't pay anything to post on LinkedIn. I don't pay anything. If I was using TikTok, I wouldn't pay to post anything there. And you can post things on Instagram and other things without paying, but people don't see, like on those other channels, people see the advertised content way, way, way more than the organic. Just means you didn't pay, not paid content. And so that's really what I'm meaning by that. Yeah. Okay. I think we're over on time, but if I posted my thing, anybody if you'd like to reach out to me on LinkedIn, I'd be happy to talk. And the slides have some links in them with additional resources, and hopefully those are useful to you.
Thanks, Chad. This has been very helpful. Great discussion.
Thanks, everybody. Go Fight Win.